Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Great. Okay, well, why don't we get started? And as people are joining, definitely introduce yourself in the chat. Say hi. We'd love to have a really interactive discussion. Hi, Magali. So just quickly, my name is Emily Ryan, and I'm leading a team of cloud native engineers across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland for Google Cloud. And we've been working with a lot of customers from their startup phase through scale up and even post-exit success, and lots of women along the way. And recently I had the opportunity to do a lot more work with my colleague here, Erin, in this intersection between startups and women founders and empowerment. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity to come talk with all of you today and connect with you. So Erin, maybe share a little bit about yourself and then we'll...
Exactly. So hi, everyone. Great to be here with you. My name's Erin. I'm based in Berlin, and I lead programs for Google for Startups here in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Google for Startups is Google's team, basically our internal task force dedicated to supporting founders and startups and startup ecosystems all around the globe. And we've got 8 bases now where our team does our work, because we know that there's so much power and benefit in the power of startups, and that at their best, startups are working to solve some of the world's biggest, most important problems, and Google wants to do their bit to help them grow. We run programs, we have campuses, and we have a bunch of worldwide partners that we work with, and we're not an investment part of Google, but we're focused on bringing people, best practices, and sharing sort of the great things of Google products with startups to help them grow. And sort of what got me into this is it's not just in DACH, it's a global problem, but we recognized relatively early on that females and women are particularly underrepresented in the startup ecosystem. We've been partnering with the German Startup Association for the last 3 years in a row to bring out research to give us some real numbers and data to help us better understand what's been going on. And we've used a lot of this data to help us drive our decision making and set up better understand where the gaps are and where we can help. And so for the last 2 years, we've been exclusively focused on supporting women founders via Google for Startups, which has been extremely exciting and personally very rewarding for me. But none of the work that I do is possible without the support of thousands of Googlers all around the world. And again, like Emily said, this is what brought us together, because the Google Cloud team has also been extremely committed to this. And I've managed to work with a ton of people in Emily's team and beyond, getting their expertise and knowledge and passion for all things tech over to the startup side to help them grow. So it's a lot of working together and sharing of resources.
Yeah, and I think we find in the founder startup scene as well, I mean, everything overlaps. So everybody needs to kind of have a little bit of a connection point on all topics, from tech to GTM to, fundraising. And So what are maybe some of the challenges that you're seeing specifically for female founders in the scene right now?
Yeah, numbers for DACH, they're not really changing. So it's less than 16% of all founders are women. And so this is a problem in itself. So we're underrepresented everywhere we look, on stage at events and meetings with investors. And we've been working to change all of that. But where we see a lot of the biggest problems is really the access to funding, right? Look, it's not that women have fewer great ideas, but somehow the women with those amazing ideas aren't getting through that initial phase where they get the money. And again, sort of numbers that came out of our research. I wonder if anyone in the chat has ever seen the Female Founders Monitor. I could even share a link if you like. It sort of talks about how women tend to be really well connected with their peers or at a peer-to-peer level, but across all industries, it's not just startups, women are missing those connections sort of to that next level up, whether that's sort of C-levels at corporates or the investors, because a lot of those people are still males. And so there's some social barriers, some social awkwardness that kind of make some of those interactions more charged. I would love to hear, if anyone's got any experience in the chat of, investment discussions or partnership discussions where you felt like you were the only woman in the room, or that I knew it. This is not, I think most women with any kind of corporate experience or even startup experience have seen something of this themselves. But so we do a lot of work with this and try and get women founders in particular to get those connections to that next level up. Because this access to funding is huge. I think women founders have, I can't remember now if it's 2.7 or 3.7, but like less than 5% of all global funding from VCs goes to women founders. So that, I think, is the biggest gap you can possibly think of.
Yeah. I mean, also to encourage more women to join the funding side, so that we need that balance across. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, so many of these discussions around what we can all do to get more or improve representation are for the women and what they can do to be better at these situations. But we also need to look at this from the other side, right? We need to have more women with writing the checks from VCs and investors. And the more women we have in those C-level boardrooms, that's obviously great. But we need the men who are on that side to really think about how they can be better allies and think about what they can do to increase representation in the people they work with.
Yes, I was hoping that maybe today we would see some men in this chat as well as allies for our female founders. Do we have any who would make themselves known? Probably not. Oh, wonderful.
Yes, Simon.
Simon.
Yes.
Yeah, I think sometimes people think that it's a closed door, but definitely the more men who are involved in this topic, the better, because then we can really support.
More than welcome, please. These conversations about how to support women founders or women in tech shouldn't just be for the women, right? There's so few of us here and there, and we need all the men who are already there to help with that.
Yeah. Although, so I say it's an open door, but Erin, maybe tell them a little bit about our Female Founders program that you were working in.
So as I said, we've been exclusively focused on women the past couple of years. And what that means is Google for Startups runs programs depending on the location and the topics. They can be anywhere from sort of 6 weeks to 6 months. And I've had 4 of these programs. I've led 4 of these programs in the last just less than 2 years. And what we focus on, we're looking for early stage startups. So mostly that could have comes into the phase of you've got your seed funding, but you're getting ready for a Series A, or maybe even slightly before that. Maybe you're working on your seed funding. And then we help with anything you can possibly imagine. We run through things, OKRs setting, helping get your team infrastructure in place, looking at your tech, what you're using, how that might be sort of optimized, business strategy, go-to-market strategy, all of these things that, when you're getting a new business off the ground, that most people can benefit from an extra advisor or a little bit of brainstorming. And it's hard sometimes at that early stage level. You can't always ask. Maybe you've got an investor on board, maybe not, but it's hard to know who you can ask without worrying that you're diminishing how you appear to some of those people. And so we like to create this really safe space where knowing that all of our advisors, they've got no real skin in the game other than a genuine want to help the startups and the founders. And so people really come with a lot of openness, transparency, and we're really able to dig in what's happening there. And it's such an exciting process to watch and to be a part of. And people really growing businesses. We've had some really great numbers come out recently. But growth in sort of, it's this 10x growth, 200,000% growth in the last 2 years with the women founders that we've been working with. And it's so exciting.
Feels great. Yeah. And what are some of the similar challenges that you're seeing across those women founders that they really can take advantage of in your programs?
I mean, something we hear actually a lot from the women that we work with, right? We know that Google has a lot to offer, and we have a lot of connections outside the company as well. But the power of the network itself. So having this group of women founders who are all working on the same challenges and who have been through or are going through all of those things at the same time, there's such a value and a power to this, which you don't see so much in a in a mixed cohort of startups. We've done that too. We do that. It's not, Google for Startups isn't just about the women. But we see particularly in these groups, this power amongst themselves when you get a bunch of amazing Powerfrauen who are working on problems that they think are going to change the world. There's such a vibe in there that's super valuable. So we know that that's important. But honestly, the challenges, we try and stay super positive and thinking of how can we support each other. So somebody, who's got the best copywriter who can help them with their upcoming marketing campaigns, or who's introductions to VCs and investors, introductions to potential partnerships. Some of our startups have actually partnered together. Skin, which is an AI beauty company, worked with one of our French innovators who's developing other beauty products, and they've completely partnered up to expand into new countries together. So these are the kinds of things that we love to see. But it's the whole, I'm seeing some chat. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have any questions over there.
Not yet, but please put your questions.
There you go. Do you have to be a founder to take part? The majority of the programs, yes. We do have some programs that are open to teams or people that are working inside of a startup. So if you're not a founder, that doesn't mean you're completely excluded, but the majority of the work that I've been doing in the DACH region is mainly for founders, yes.
There are some other opportunities. I think we have some women developer academies where we're focused on finding women working in tech fields who then are interested maybe in growing their ability to present in front of an audience or grow their brand in the market. And I think these kind of things are super valuable. Also, maybe if you want to become a founder, so you get some groundwork.
Yeah.
There. So there's a lot of other programs you can take advantage of too.
Exactly. Take a look for those. The developer, what was it called? The Women Developer
Academy.
Take a look for that. But there's also, wait, if I can put this in the chat. So this is our latest offering, because the work that we're doing, well, the work that I do, I can only work with so many people in this year. Sadly, there's only one of me, so my work is relatively limited. But Startup School is available to anybody worldwide, and you can access that as you want, sort of on demand. So check that out, and that's available to founders and their whole team. So there's tons of stuff to learn in there. Biggest challenge for female founders. There's a bunch of systemic things which I think are problems for women founders or women in tech or women anywhere, right? Which sort of there's some obstacles that women need to overcome, but some of that is hard for the women to do themselves, right? This is what we're talking before about the allies. But because I work with men and women, what I see over and over again is confidence in yourself and being able to believe in your power and your special strengths. Emily and I were talking about this just a couple of days ago, actually, in another panel, where we see job descriptions. So if you're trying to hire somebody, for example, right, women tend to apply only to a job when they meet all of the criteria listed there, where men, by and large, will apply when they might only meet 30 or 40%. It's the same with women founders, right? They won't start their startup until they're ticking all of the boxes or they're 100% ready for launch, but they really just need to throw it out there, iterate, and sort of grow with it. So confidence would be something we see across the board, where I would love to see more women just going big, right? Having that faith in themselves.
Yeah, and you're never 100% ready. I think this is a fallacy. And at Google, we always say this phrase: you want to be uncomfortably excited, because that means you're really pushing yourself. So it's uncomfortable. If it was comfortable, everybody would be in there.
Yeah. This is exactly it. As an example of this, right? And I have so many of these. We get our programs are openly called women founder programs. We're looking for women leading things. We get men applying to our programs all the time, right? They're not meeting the number one criteria, right? It's in the name, and they don't care, right? They see an opportunity to work with Google and sort of have access to all of these things, and they just want in. And they will try and convince us that, the fact they're not a woman doesn't matter. If women would do that more, this, I think, would be this would be a huge start.
Wow. Now we see this in the tech space that so certification is kind of a way to prove your expertise, and a lot of women kind of try to do it on the side, and a lot of times then because of other reasons, in your life, there's a lot of things going on and it's difficult. And where we see that we have success getting women certified in our technology is when we do like study jams. So we do kind of some joint fixed activities, and then that helps them get that official certification, which then makes them feel a little bit like they can more use the label of expert out in the market.
That's a brilliant idea. I mean, something else I think that women often struggle with in the startup world is this perception, which sadly in many ways often sort of proves itself to be true. People expect startup founders to be working 24/7. Right? That you're not really a real founder if you're not working completely around the clock, devoting all your waking hours. Whereas for many women, we're more so than men, are balancing other responsibilities with family care options, whether it's children or elder care or whatever it might be. But there is actually a generation of women founders, or founders in general, actually showing that you can build a really successful startup without killing yourself and sort of being online 24 hours a day, right? There's some founders you can look around at that talk about work-life balance, and maybe your growth trajectory is slightly different. And this is where VCs need to also adapt their thing. It seems that lots more women, I forget the number, I'm sorry, the number of women-founded startups, because we have less access to capital, we have women-founded startups have to grow in a slightly different way, which may mean they're not such this hockey stick, but the growth is actually much more sustainable, and more women-founded startups than men actually end up being profitable businesses. So
yeah, super interesting.
Hang on, I'm going to find a link to this so that.
Okay. Well, while you're looking for that, I also wanted to mention a program that's global, that's often run by the Women Tech Makers group, which is associated with Google, but also working with a lot of other companies, called I Am Remarkable. And that's also just a chance to really embrace the things that you have already accomplished and become comfortable talking about those achievements and not feeling like you're bragging or you have to be humble. And that's maybe a good starting point too, if you want to become a founder, or if you are a founder and you realize that you need to step out of some of these boxes.
And, Michelle, I've got another great link for you. This is research that actually just came out today from Google together with Handelsblatt, which is like the German version of The Economist, talking about Germany as the state of the nation for startups there, and tons of stories actually included. We worked with them together on this to get some women founders represented. So there's some new data, some new great role models to take a look at in there. So go check that out as well.
Is it only in German?
Sadly, only in German. Like yeah.
Google Translate.
I was going to say, there's a couple of really great tools that you can check out to help you read through that. Founders being entrepreneurial and different.
That's a really good point. Yeah. You don't have to fit that classic mold.
Yeah. Super true. I feel like I'm speaking only of this report. I promise you, I read other things, but the Female Founders Monitor, they actually sort of created these personas of what the typical founder looks like. And for the male founders, this was much more easy to define, because it was like, okay, they tend to be white. They've probably studied at the WHU, which is this big university in Germany. And there was sort of a bunch of things that they studied, and it was very, whereas women founders by nature were much more diverse as a group. So, culturally, what they studied, what they're focusing on as their business, like the whole diversity inside this underrepresented group is also wider. So really interesting there.
And that's then tapping into a whole different part of the market. Yeah. So you're seeing, so many different facets that you wouldn't necessarily from these classic founders.
Absolutely.
So that must be the future. The future is really these underrepresented groups then being more represented in the building of our next generation of technology and services.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know for Google as well, we have a lot of emphasis on diversity from all perspectives, and February is Black History Month. So we've had a great series that's highlighting Black founders. Maybe I can find the link and share that here as well. Some super companies. Any other questions from the audience? Topics that you see in your daily life that you would love to bring out in a forum to hear if other people are experiencing that as well?
Spoiler alert, they probably have. Yeah, you're not alone with your problems and challenges. Someone else has probably experienced it.
I search for my link.
Yeah. And actually, on that note, Google for Startups just announced our European Black Founders Fund on Monday this week.
Yes.
So, which is a huge, big deal. Matt, we'll get to your question in a moment. Which is a huge, big deal, obviously, because a lot of the focus has been on women founders in recent times. It hasn't moved the needle an incredible amount, but Black founders or people of color is another hugely underrepresented and underestimated group. So if there are any people of color here in the audience, please check that out and go and get some funding and get some help for your business to help you grow.
Yeah, you were sharing something with me, Erin, about kind of comparing the Black founders programs with the women founders programs, and where you saw some.
Well, what I was talking about, I think, with that one was, we bring these groups together because we figured this is a sort of underrepresented groups, and there's this huge power of the network, right? But we saw even in that, the difference in the women only group and what they would share and how they would be with each other was different in the Black founders group. Even there were women and men, it was a mixed group. It was an incredible group of founders. But as soon as men are in the room, there's this need to keep up some kind of bravado. Bravado is the wrong word, but some kind of posture or facade that you're on top of all your stuff, that, whereas the women, as soon as sort of that, you realize it's a safe space and everyone's sharing with each other, sort of the gloves come off, and it's like, wow, I'm really struggling with this week, and I've had this really difficult discussion, and I would love your help, to how I might work on this with my team or something. It's just it's a much more open space. So it's not just, to Matt's question, thinking about female only incentives or benefits or groups together. The women only space is something really valuable and to be treasured and super powerful. In terms of female only benefits at the workplace, I don't know. Do we do anything like that at Google? I don't know about things that are only available to women.
Yeah, I mean, I think we also we provide equity, which means then bringing everybody up to the same level, not necessarily making everybody equal, but giving equity, which I'm sure there's some great websites that explain the difference. But for instance, we had a women in cloud mentoring program that really took off, and that was a real beneficial program. And now we have similar programs running for other groups that are mixed. But I think just having the option to do something like that with a female mentor.
Yeah. Matt, what are you referring to something specific? Would you like to elaborate on, what are your thoughts on female only benefits in the workplace? Maybe he's typing. We'll wait and see if he responds.
And Amy, great point on the disabled founders. I think just to Erin's comment, so maybe including yourself in the women founders rounds. And then certainly, Google is very conscious of this as well. And we have different offerings coming out. So stay tuned. Perhaps there could be a disabled founders round.
Yeah, for sure. And we're actually displaying the shares differently to shut down investor concerns.
I'm not sure if I understand Exactly. So Marcus, are you a founder together with your wife? Is that the
Yeah, because I think there's this concern, right? Investors, when they see that the man and the woman are equal shareholders, but if the woman goes and has kids, then this is a risk to the business, right? Yeah. So again, we see that a lot, and it's actually this is not a private, this is a relatively public anecdote. The founders of Clue, I don't know if anybody knows this startup. It's one of the biggest sort of female health startups in the world. Period tracker, fertility tracker, this kind of thing. And it's actually a husband and wife founder team. And they're now so big. They've raised so much money. They're huge and powerful. But at the beginning, they would go into investor meetings, and the leader was actually Ida. She's the wife in this team, and she was the boss, and she had developed the product and all these things. But they would go into these investment meetings, and her husband, he now tells the story about this, that the investors would automatically look to him, and he would kind of try and redirect the conversation back to Ida, but they would always go back to him. And so then they realized, especially at these early stages, that to play the game, right, to get to the point where they had a bit more leverage and negotiation power, they would just play that game, even though they didn't like it. And and then at some point, once they'd raised their second or third round of funding, and they were super, or maybe even their first round, I can't remember at which point they did it, but they realized that they had a bit more bargaining power. And when the investors who had being disrespectful in that way in the earlier rounds wanted to invest in the later rounds, once they were showing this incredible value as a business, they were like, actually, no, it doesn't feel like our cultures match. And we've seen really what's important to you and your perspective on things. And they were then left out. So this is kind of a decision that I think every founder or woman or every person has to decide how much you want to play the game at those early levels when maybe you don't have so much leverage. Right. And then at what point you can decide sort of that you have more of the power to decide which path you go down. I don't think there's a wrong or right way to do it, but I think at least understanding even that is there is interesting.
Yeah. Super interesting. They put your money where your mouth is once you reach a certain level, but exactly. Before maybe you
sort of have to suck it up a little bit.
Yeah. I think the point also about people automatically assuming that the male is in the lead in the company. I hear some recommendations for women having a male colleague to kind of chime in and emphasize the value that they're bringing into the round, which is a little bit like,
I feel like that maybe goes too far. Exactly, right? That you have to look for a male founder just to sort of give you that credibility, I think is really maybe the wrong direction for that. But if you are already a mixed team, then leveraging your strengths at the stage that you're in, I think is the key. Hang on, I unfortunately have to jump out in 10 minutes ago, but this is such a great conversation. I can't resist. Charlie's question there, this is a super interesting one. What are your views on why VC money goes to male founders? Is it a mistrust of female leaders? Interesting. I think because the world of VC funding is actually still very much a closed club of people that know each other. It's actually a very small world, right? And a lot of the VC investors are men, so their bubble includes a lot of other men. They all went to the same universities. They know a lot of the same people, and those introductions just keep on happening. There are now a lot of VCs who are really making a concerted effort to get more women in their portfolio and to expand and maybe take what they see as bigger gambles on earlier stage or women-founded companies. I don't know if it's mistrust in women, but we also see, right, there's research around this. I think there's a professor from a university in Sweden who I spoke to at the end of last year doing a lot of research on this. Investors, or even on stage at startup conferences, the jury will ask women different questions than they ask the men. And so women are being asked to prove themselves, or sort of, they're being judged on their proven performance, whereas men are very often given the benefit of the doubt, and they are asked it might sound like the same question, but the words used are often from a slightly different perspective, which leads the women to feel like they're answering more on the defensive, which is not a great position to be in, whereas men are more often just given the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier too, like some of the women-run businesses do have a different growth model. So you can't then hold them accountable to some of maybe the milestones that they're expecting from a male-run company.
Exactly. But this is kind of this vicious circle, right? Because if they had access to that bigger, maybe they're operating only with funding that they raise from angel investors or from friends and family. There's only so much money you can borrow from your family, right? So it's not in most people's families, it's not a $5 million seed round, whereas a lot more males get access to that kind of money right off the bat for their super early startup. I think the number of women startups who have raised more than $1 million is extremely small, right? I don't have the number in my head, but it's less than 20%, whereas the number from male founders is sort of over 60%, right? This is in your seed round. So this is showing the disparities there. And so if a woman can't raise that money in the super early stage, of course, she's being forced to build her business in a different way. Her growth trajectory will look different. But maybe if she got the more funding earlier, then she would have been able to build in a different way. So it's,
Yeah, vicious cycle is a good way to call it. And I think bringing awareness to these topics to as many folks as possible, bringing allies into the business from the founder side, from the VC side, from the supporting programs. But this is all great steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
It was a great chat with all of you. Thanks so much to be here, Erin, and share your great views and interesting statistics. And it was really nice chatting with all of you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
We hope to do something like this again at another SaaStock and bring some of these topics to the forefront.
Absolutely. I'd love to be back. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.